Hey everybody, I'm Adam Alexander. It's time for the HUBCast. It's Tuesday, August 9th, and I'm glad to have with me my good friends. Introduce yourselves, would you please?
I'm Max Harnett.
I'm Russell Wenrich.
All right, so there you go. Those are the fellas, and we're on YouTube, so if you're watching us there, we appreciate you tuning in. And if you're listening at iTunes, go ahead and get that subscription so you can tell your friends and you can play along. And if you're listening on Google Play, we appreciate you being a part of the program there. So we got 4 races to go to the chase, coming up to an off weekend. And coming off a great event at Watkins Glen. You guys enjoyed what you saw on Sunday?
Yeah, anytime we go to a road course, I always enjoy it. The racing is always good. It's always exciting. I was very entertained. One of the most entertaining races of the year.
Let me ask this question. Let's go back, and I'm sure you've figured this out if you watch. We don't typically do a lot of rehearsal for what we're doing. We just have a couple of topics in mind, and we come out and share our thoughts. But let's go back 5 years, and I know this is hard to do, but let's go back 5 years. Give me 3 races 5 years ago that you definitely would not miss on the Sprint Cup schedule. Give me 3 races 5 years ago that absolutely appointment TV that you would not miss. What were they?
Daytona 500.
Daytona 500. We all agree on that. So Daytona 500.
Bristol Night Race.
Bristol Night Race. You agree with that, Max?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would say that one. And for me, I would probably say the Coke 600 just because of the magnitude of that event. It's Memorial Day weekend. To me, it's the biggest day. But go ahead, that'll be my third. Each of you throw out another third.
Martinsville's always been
I know you
good
like
racing.
Martinsville. Yeah. And what would
Talladega fan.
And I love Talladega too. Okay, so we've incorporated 5 tracks there. Not one of us said road course racing. Now, I could have made a pitch for Sonoma because I've always been fond of that area and that race. But not one of us mentioned a road course.
Well, the depth of talent at road course races is nowhere near what it is now.
Yeah, it's gotten better and better, which has made the races even more competitive. And I made this comment watching, I think I tweeted about it during the race on Sunday. And shoot, I don't know how many people remember this, but there was a day when we had double file restarts in NASCAR. Okay, and the lead lap cars started on the inside, and on the outside were the lap down cars. That was the restart procedure, which seems like
crazy now.
I can't even hardly remember it, and I called races when it was that way. Then we went to double file restart shootout style, which is where we are today, where everybody starts side by side, double file restarts. And I think about how that's changed the game. We used to think, because the rule was you did the lead lap cars on the inside, lap down cars on the outside, and we thought it was a really big deal and it was really exciting when the caution came out and we got a restart inside of 10 laps because the rule was then the lap down cars went to the back and it was a single file restart for the guys running for position. And now these guys are running side by side. When that rule went into play, I think it changed everything at these road courses.
Oh, yeah. And strategy. Like, these crew chiefs are so much smarter now and have figured stuff out where you're on so many different strategies that's made it more interesting.
No question. And to Max's point, the depth of competition at the road courses has just gotten exponentially better as these guys have honed their craft when it comes to turning both left and right.
Well, I think it's also a credit to the system that NASCAR's implemented with the chase. The win and you're in mentality has changed this. This used to be a throwaway race for these guys. It was like if you come out of there with a top 10 finish, it was a bonus, but it didn't really matter. You could do whatever you want out there. It didn't count for anything. Now it counts for a lot with bonus points, and for guys like A.J. Allmendinger, if you can get a win, it changes the whole season. So I think it added a lot more value to these, to the road course races.
And that was kind of going to be my second topic, but we'll go ahead and dig into that. Here we are 4 races away from the chase. We're a month away, basically, from the playoffs beginning in NASCAR. Has the game started to change? Have we started to see the mentality and the mindset start to go from here to here as these guys start to get into playoff mode? Do you guys sense that at all? I sensed it Sunday.
Oh yeah. It's either, there's 2 different categories now. You either are points racing or you're trying to win. And I think that started, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But this week it was evident. Like, this is going to be a good points day for Larson. Look at Larson coming off the final turn. We thought he was going to have a great points day, and now look at him.
But see, I think with this new format and this win and you're in type situation, and just the chase format in general, if you go back 8 or 10 years and Kyle Larson is 16th or 17th in points, and he gets turned coming off turn 7, like what happened with A.J. Allmendinger, and goes from 4th to 29th, he's going to be upset. And he may very well pay A.J. Allmendinger back when we get to Bristol or Richmond or Martinsville or wherever he chooses to pay him back. But he's not going to be as upset as he was Sunday because he realizes that very well could take me out of an opportunity to be in the chase. I mean, he had a reason to be really pissed. Before, you didn't really care. I mean, I won't say he didn't care, but it didn't matter as much. The chase has absolutely changed the game.
And I'd say this year, it almost snuck up on me how important these races got, how quickly. Because before Tony won, before Chris Buescher had won, there are a lot more guys in on points. Guys like Chase Elliott were much more comfortable in their points position. It kind of felt like, yeah, we'll get there, but it's not really coming down to it yet. And now all of a sudden it's 4 to go, and it is all out for those final spots. It crept up on me this year.
Well, and if you fast forward, and let's just go to the second race in the chase, which is basically like a short track in New Hampshire. All right? And let's say they're coming off of turn 4. Brad Keselowski gets into Martin Truex Jr. and turns him like what we saw on Sunday. And I'm not going to get into intent and all that, but let's just say exact same scenario plays out at New Hampshire and we're in the chase. I don't know if Brad comes over and apologizes because he probably needs to let Martin cool off because there is no doubt that situation is not going to end at New Hampshire like it did Sunday at Watkins Glen.
No, Brad got out and went to Martin's car. Had it been in New Hampshire, Martin would have gone out and gone to Brad's car.
Waiting for him. Yeah. They would have been waiting for him when he got out of his car. No doubt about it. And rightfully so because there's so much on the line. As it is, and Brad pointed this out in his interview, you know what? We both have a win. And he's right. At the end of the day, what happened was not a big deal.
And Martin wasn't going to win that race.
No, I don't think Martin was going to win
not
either.
At that point.
I mean, no. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the fact that he sold it as I wanted to get beside him, and I thought maybe we could drag race to the line. I didn't see it happening. But having said that, they both have wins. It was not that big of a deal. But I'm telling you, we're a month away from it being a really big deal. And you think about it, and the emotion that has come out in this style of the chase. You think about how upset Matt Kenseth was at Charlotte a couple of years ago, right? You think about with Brad. You think about what happened with Brad and Jeff Gordon when we were at Texas. You go to Kevin Harvick last year and Jimmie Johnson at Chicago. Certainly, you know, Matt and Joey at Martinsville following Kansas. These are things that I won't say we've never seen this. It didn't matter time of year. It was the exception and not the rule. Yeah. Now it's almost like you just feel it building, and you know it's going to happen. When it happened the first time, you're like, oh, you know, I mean, what was it Dale Jr. said at Charlotte? This damn chase, boy, it's working, right? Yeah. Now, that was kind of the first time. Now we're starting to see it over and over, and I just think we're building to that again, which I think is fantastic. That's the way it ought to be.
Every year, it just adds to it now. There's more and more rivalries.
You're
There's
right.
more and more under the surface. Now everybody's got a beef with at least somebody else on the track, and it just keeps bubbling. And we're gonna add more. We're gonna add more to it. Guys are just gonna get madder and madder at each other.
I agree.
It's great.
Yeah, I feel like I'm up in the booth saying, "Watch these two. They have history." And then you start looking, and you're like, "Well, they have history here. These guys have history here." It's like we have so much history now against drivers. It's amazing.
The subplots that come out once we get into the chase are very interesting. Certainly something we'll have to watch. And we probably, along with all the stat lines that we're making along the way, should be making the notes that you're talking about of guys that have had run-ins against one another. And let's face it, they don't forget. Because I had never heard Kyle Larson talk about A.J. Allmendinger wrecking him anywhere. But, boy, I'll tell you, he went down the list on Sunday and went as far back as Las Vegas.
Yeah, they don't forget.
When Kyle Larson's bringing that up, it's an indication of the memory bank that these guys hold, and that there will, in fact, be payback at some point in time, and Kyle Larson pretty much sent out the promise. All right, the guy that won the race, Denny Hamlin, didn't really get any of the headlines.
Well, he got some headlines.
Yeah, he got one of them that was wrong, actually. Story for another time. But I'll tell you this, you know, Denny Hamlin is a guy, I would say, even though he's had as much success as he has had in his career, and he's enjoyed a lot of success, I would say he's kind of an under-the-radar guy, right? I mean, we could sit here and mention a lot of people and how good they are, where they're at in their career, how many championships they're going to win, and Denny's name might not get mentioned, right? I mean, you guys agree with that?
Yeah, totally.
And yet Denny's not a bad guy or hard to get along with, or I mean, he's got some personality. I mean, it's not like there's a reason that he doesn't get the fanfare. He just doesn't, right? And now he wins at Watkins Glen. I mean, he nearly wins at Sonoma. Probably should have won at Sonoma. Doesn't. Wins at Watkins Glen. And it's like all of a sudden he snuck up on us, and he's won at every kind of track. Great on the short tracks, in particular at Martinsville and Richmond, right? Intermediates, I mean, when you go total up intermediate wins, it's hard because there's so many different types of them. But Texas is the place that comes to mind where Denny's been really good. But he's won on the intermediates. Won the Daytona 500 this year, and he was on that short list of guys that were good that had never won a plate track until a couple of years ago when he won at Talladega, and now a road course. So he's crossed them all off. He even said post-race, I feel like now I've hit for the cycle. I've got them all.
Well, he had mentioned it at Sonoma how bad he wanted.
Yeah, and how big of a missed opportunity that was to cross road course off the list. Where now does Denny fall, and how big in this era of NASCAR do you guys think it is to have claimed victory at every type of venue? What do you guys think? And does it change your perception of a guy knowing that he's won at every type of track?
I would say it does. We get so caught up on pigeonholing guys into what they're good at, whether it's AJ at road courses or Dale Jr. on restrictor plates. So for a guy like Denny Hamlin be like, yeah, that guy can go out and win anywhere. I mean, it puts him in the category of the Kyle Bushes and the Jimmie Johnsons and those kind of guys that just go out and can win every week, which to me makes you an instant title contender.
Is he one of 6 current guys that are Tony Stewart, Kyle Busch, Jimmie Johnson, Jeff Gordon, if you consider Jeff current, which he's current enough, obviously, and Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin. Am I leaving someone off?
You said Harvick?
Did I say Harvick? I don't know if I said Harvick. So there's 7. Maybe I didn't say Harvick. You got your cheat sheet there?
There's 7. There's
7. Okay, so I did
I'd
leave Harvick
ask
off.
Brian.
Yeah. Do you think he would know? Do you think Brian would know those 7?
Absolutely.
Absolutely he would. Politically correct over there. So there's 7 guys that have won at all types. So again, I went through them quickly, but you've got Denny Hamlin, Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Jimmie Johnson, Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, and I left another one off. Who am I leaving off this time?
Joey Logano?
Joey Logano. Anyway, so there's your 7. There's your 7. Doesn't matter. All right, but some of the guys who haven't.
Which surprised me. The number one that surprised all of us, I think, is Kurt Busch.
Yeah, Kurt Busch, because he's not won a restrictor plate race.
Champion, hasn't won a plate race.
It would surprise me if we've made such a big deal about Kurt not winning at a restrictor plate because he's so good that it was kind of the first one that came to mind. It's like, well, we know Kurt hasn't won a restrictor plate because we talk about it all the time.
But there was one guy that you thought for sure was on the list that wasn't.
Yeah, Keselowski. Yeah. And because when I think road courses, I remember Keselowski's been in the battle. I mean,
he's in the hunt every
Glen.
year. Yeah.
He's in it.
He finished second at Watkins Glen 3 straight years.
I mean, he's in it every time.
But he's not good at Sonoma, so that's the, he's got one chance every year almost.
I was just shocked he hadn't had a win at a road course. That really surprised me.
And when you start talking about who's the next guy going to be, I like Matt Kenseth, but
he hasn't won on a road course.
But he hasn't won on a road course is the only one. But gosh, I mean, he's
a
lot better now.
But I have
than
to take
he
him
was.
or Brad to do it next. I would take Brad to win on a road course.
Yeah, so I wouldn't make it Kenseth.
Yeah.
Carl Edwards is a guy that hasn't won on a restrictor plate track, and
he would probably be number 1 on my list.
He would be number 1 on your list.
Yeah. Well, just because of how well Gibbs is doing this year.
I mean, those Stuart Hoskins, the 41 and the 4 are just as strong as those.
I can't
Gibbs
argue
cars.
with you on that. I'm just saying that he's my first.
I'd put Kurt as my number 1.
And I think for me, I think I would probably put Brad just because Carl and Kurt are both outstanding plate racers. Kurt in particular. Carl hasn't been as good, but Kurt, I mean, is really, really good at that style of racing. Yeah. But he's never won. And what that tells me is it's at those tracks you can be great. And you just don't. I mean, everything has to go your way to get a win.
Yeah.
Where when I look
Rusty
at
Wallace never won on a plate track.
Right.
Like it's
But I look at Brad and I think Brad is good at playing the strategy game and on fuel mileage. And while Sonoma's not a great track for him, he's going to be in the hunt a lot at Sonoma just by virtue of the fact he's in good equipment and he's a better than average guy, right, when it comes. I mean, he's not great, but he's
and one of those races always come down to fuel mileage.
That's what I'm saying.
Brad's always a contender.
He's going to put himself in position at Sonoma. If the cards played out right, he could win there. And then you go to Watkins Glen where you just know the numbers say he's going to be in the hunt. That's why I would say he's the next one.
But he has half the chances is why I say not.
Yeah, and really, if you take Sonoma out, he's got like a fourth of the chances.
Right. So that's the difference.
No, that's a fair point. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you have Daytona, Talladega, and Daytona again before you even hit the next road course. Right. I'm sorry, Talladega, Daytona, Talladega. You have 3 more restrictor plate races before you even hit the next road course. So I'd be more inclined to take Kurt just from the opportunity.
Another interesting name on there that we didn't mention is Casey Kane.
Yeah, no plate races.
No plate,
but he's won everywhere else.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's the other thing that's difficult. Here's what's tough. NASCAR has labeled the tracks this way. Short track, which is anything under a mile. Speedway, which is anything a mile or bigger. Super speedway, which is Daytona, Talladega, and road course. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, really, I think they just do road course, short track, and speedway.
They don't even give Daytona, Talladega their own category.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, the categories are much deeper than that. Yeah. If
we look at it way different.
We really do, but I mean, short track obviously is Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond. But there are a lot of people that would lump Phoenix and New Hampshire into the short track category, even though they're a mile in length. Dover's a mile. It's got some short track principles, but the speed you carry there, sometimes it feels like an intermediate, right? Yeah. Then you have all the mile and a halves.
They're all different.
Darlington, which is a mile and a third, but is in its own little category. Then you got the 2-mile tracks, which are California and Michigan, but I've always kind of lumped them into that intermediate category.
Yeah. Then you have Pocono and Indy.
Then you have Pocono and Indy, which are 2.5, but they're not plate tracks. So there's really, to be fair, there are a lot more categories probably than what we put out there. But if you go and you close it down to those 4 categories, there are 7 guys that have won it all 4.
And we've talked about the stat of guys that have the most wins across every track on the series. I mean,
like
right
Kyle
now, Kyle Busch only 3 short, and Tony Stewart only
2 short.
Or 2 short. He was 3. 2
Pocono
now.
And
That's more telling to your point about all the different. I mean, you could break it down to 36 different tracks, really.
Yeah,
or
you really
not 30, whatever it is, 28.
But the mile and a halves.
See, I'm good with numbers.
I mean, the mile and a halves really do all have their own characteristics,
Yeah.
even though they measure mile and a half.
There's some that are more like the others.
Absolutely.
But
yeah. And then you bring in the repaving, which changes all that too. One last thing on this subject. If we were going to start ranking guys and putting one in front of the other, is championship still for you guys the number one end-all, be-all? If you start ranking guys, how many championships do you have? Would you make that your number one piece of material if you're evaluating who should be in front of who, like on an all-time list kind of thing?
I think you have to win a championship, but I don't think it's got to have to be like 5 championships or 4 championships. Like, I don't think that could be your decider.
Like you don't necessarily say because Jimmie's won 6, he should be in front of Gordon, who's won 4 necessarily.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you do need to win a championship to be in that upper echelon conversation.
Right.
Okay. Then I guess next, number of wins. Where does number of wins rank? How important is that to you?
I mean, it's up there. It depends on the era.
That's what I was going to say. It depends on the era, and I agree with that. Which I think is Jimmie is at 79 now. Is that right? Jimmie Johnson 70. What's Jimmie?
78.
77.
77.
Okay, he's one run in front of Earnhardt. I'm trying to help the guy out here. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm getting at is when you start going through and you're ranking drivers and building who's in Group A and who's in Group B and Group C and so on.
What do you determine?
Where does this I've won at all kinds of tracks? Where does that rank? How much weight does that hold when you're ranking these guys?
I think it's hard because we talked a couple weeks ago about Kyle Busch winning at all but 2 tracks. Like, I think that's way more important, and when you have drivers that are close to doing that than just all different types of tracks. But I think it is important, like that you're going to have to be a well-rounded driver.
But I just don't feel like it's something we've talked a lot about, and now Denny's done it, and it's kind of brought my awareness to it.
Well, look at the champs that haven't done it, like Kurt, Keselowski, Kenseth.
Yeah.
All champions, but haven't won at a track. And
I think it would be really good now, and what we've seen is to put a road course in the Chase, because that would add another element. We got 5.5 mile races in the Chase, and while all those races are different, they bring enough similar characteristics that it changes the game. I'd like to see Sonoma in the Chase, or Pocono, or Watkins Glen in the Chase. One
or
of
a
those
different one.
Or a different one. Yeah, Circuit of the Americas or something like that.
It's appointment TV, I think, for a lot of fans.
I agree.
And I think if you put another one in, I think it would continue to be.
And it could be an elimination race, which would be even better.
Know what track Larry Mack threw out? That would be a good spot for the Chase. Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah.
Late in the season, everybody's cold, but you'd be down in Texas.
Yeah,
nice
and Austin.
And warm still.
One of the premier racing venues in the United States.
Absolutely, that'd be a really cool track.
I don't see it happening anytime soon,
No.
unless Bruton Smith
Probably
ISC buys
never.
it. I don't think we're going to see it. Let's go now. Last thing we'll cover today on the podcast: Hendrick Motorsports.
Yeah.
It's been they have had as rocky a summer as I can remember in a couple of different ways. One, the stat column. They went 3 consecutive races, I think, without a top 10 at all, which was the longest streak they had in 10 years or 12 years.
I think they have won in the last 5 races.
Yeah, and that was Jimmie Johnson at New Hampshire, I believe, when he started on the pole. Am I right or no?
Indy.
At Indy, okay.
With that whole stuff at the end.
Right, when they got back, yeah. So they've struggled. I mean, the stat column says that. Then you add in the element of everything that Dale Jr.'s fighting. And I'm not going to go and say there's great distraction at Hendrick Motorsports. I haven't sensed that there's great distraction or that's
it's
created.
A distraction.
But it is a distraction. Yeah. It is. And it's a change. You are taking a huge body of your work and pulling them out. And there are a lot of questions being asked about when's Dale going to come back. And we don't know, and there's no need to pontificate. And he said, I'm going to be back when I'm ready. But that's always lingering out there of what's next. And this winless streak thing. And now
17 races.
17 races, longest since 2001, 2002. If you bridge the end of 2001, the beginning of 2002, that's the last time they went this long without a win. And if they don't win at Bristol, which when you look at how things are going for them, and you look at who's dominated that race lately,
Penske and Joe Gibbs,
you would think that they won't win there. I mean, that's what you would guess. What would that do? Where would that put them?
Early 90s.
I was going to say like 94, I want to say.
93, 94, I believe it's 22 races.
So, yeah. I mean, we are in kind of some uncharted territory here. Jimmie Johnson finished 40th at Watkins Glen, the first time ever in his career, that he's finished dead last in a Sprint Cup race.
Well, and it's a little bit of a misleading stat. We were talking about this weekend.
Oh, it is.
For most of his career, you had starting park teams that would be bowing out for early parts of that race.
He still finished last, though, Max.
I understand that.
But we're talking about, here's a guy that's made over 500 starts. How many starts has Jimmie made? Do you know how many starts Jimmie's made, roughly? I mean, it's over 500.
Over 500.
I mean, over 500 starts. The guy's won 6 championships.
It would have been.
He made the Chase every year.
For years,
he's never finished last. Ever.
But for years, it would have been actually very hard to try and finish last. The way those
Tony
races
Stewart's
would go.
finished last multiple times.
I'm just saying the fact that it's never happened, and I'm not saying that.
Just till recently, right? That was like
I'm not saying that Jimmie Johnson finishing last is an indication of where Hendrick Motorsports is with their program. That's not the point I'm making. I'm just saying there are a lot of things that have happened this summer that make you say, it's a struggle. Yeah. Their cars don't, and here's the deal.
Laps.
They're not at the front as much. Yeah. And I think about this. Jimmie Johnson had those 2 wins early. They weren't the typical start on the pole, dominate, lead a bunch of laps, and win races. A win's a win, and we know that. And Jimmie's obviously far beyond locked into the Chase. But those were not prototypical 48 Jimmie Johnson wins. And I think we can all agree.
Those were 2 Chad Knaus wins, really.
Yeah, starting in May, the guy carrying the flag early May on was Chase Elliott.
Yeah.
And Chase Elliott in June goes to Michigan and nearly wins the race and finishes 2nd. And since that time, he's not recorded a top 10 in 7 straight races. He had a 100-point lead over the cut. Now it's down to 49 over the cut. So all I'm saying is it's been a rough summer. And I think Chase is gonna get in. I feel real confident about him getting in despite their problems. And I think he gets 1 or 2 races going for him. I think they can get in and he can make a push in the chase. I really believe that. And Jimmie Johnson's Jimmie Johnson. I mean, it's you'd be a fool to count that guy out ever.
Yeah.
But I think we're at a point where you probably believe 2 guys are going to get in the chase from over there because we don't know when Dale Jr. is going to come back. And Casey Kane's not done anything to make you believe they're going to make a move, especially with Buescher winning if he gets in the top 30 in points.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle, and really I would say a struggle of historic proportions. And I'm not trying to overstate this at all. We just haven't seen this out of that group in a long time.
Well, you just look at the 78 team, one car team. They've led nearly 3 times the amount of laps that all of Hendrick Motorsports has led this year.
And that, I would say part of that's unfair
the numbers
just because
are the numbers.
They've been so good. I mean,
but the numbers are the numbers.
Oh, no, right. It's a real stat. But I'm just saying the 78's been in their own zip code when it comes to laps led this year. So,
Still a one-car team.
I'll make this pitch and then we'll go. Martin Truex Jr. reminds me of Kevin Harvick when he won the championship in 2014. You agree there are some similarities there? Leading a bunch of laps.
100%.
Had races that you would say they would have won and something crazy happens.
Yeah. I can see that.
I'm not making my championship prediction.
You just did.
Just an observation.
Write it down.
And the last thing I'll leave
the
with
new
you,
room.
Eric Jones.
First prediction.
Eric Jones announces he's going to Sprint Cup next year.
Mm-hmm. How many wins next year? Does he win next year?
Yes, he wins.
How many times?
I'm going to say 1. I'll just give him 1. But I'll say this. He won Rookie of the Year in the trucks and won a championship. He's going to win Rookie of the Year this year in Xfinity, more than likely.
Think?
Well, I mean, he's the front runner for sure.
Okay.
This guy's probably going to win. This guy's probably going to win Rookie of the Year 3 straight years. That's pretty cool. Never been done, right? I'm guessing. We can look that up. All right.
Don't put me on the spot.
I had fun. You guys have fun?
That was
in our new
fun.
room. All right. Thanks. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Thanks for listening on iTunes. Get that subscription. And thanks for listening on Google Play. And we'll talk to you next week.